What's up, everybody? We're back. Corey Hughes, Bloody History. All right, so we're going through the FBI reports, the consolidated FBI reports on Mexico City, and what have we discovered? What has been the earth-shattering revelation? That despite the visa to return, despite the bus ticket to return, despite all that stuff, nobody can put Oswald on the bus back. Nobody. Because Oswald was never there. It was clearly Kerry Thornley, and Kerry Thornley didn't take the bus back. This opens the door again for David Pierce Magyar to have given him a flight out of Mexico City, right? So that's the deal. We've gone through all this stuff where they come up with all his aliases. Remember, we talked about O.H. Lee being backdated, right? So I'm pretty sure we read through all this, and we're going to start on this page here, which is a continuation from where we were. So it says here, a review of the carbon copies of these reservation and purchase orders was made by the confidential source abroad in the presence of Mrs. Schaefer, which revealed that reservation and purchase order number 14618 was issued to Transporte del Norte in Mexico City for Mr. H.O. Lee for seat number 12 from Mexico City to Laredo, Texas on Wednesday, October 2nd, 1963 at 8:30 a.m. This information was printed in Spanish and the reservation was confirmed by Mr. Saucedo. At the bottom of this printed order, the date was indicated to be September 30th, 1963. And the cost was listed at $93.75. Also at the bottom of this printed order was the printed notice that the Agencia de Valles Transporte Chihuahua as an agent for the Greyhound bus line. Okay, so the ticket was sold to O.H. Lee, but he wasn't on the bus. Nobody could put him on the bus. Nobody who was on the bus recognized him as being on the bus. So here's the thing that catches my attention. It was supposed to be a ticket for October 2nd, 1963, 8:30 a.m. This information was printed in Spanish, and the reservation was confirmed by a Mr. Saucedo. At the bottom of the printed order, the date was indicated to be September 30th, so the ticket was bought on September 30th. All right. Ms. Schaefer advised that former employee Rolando Barrios had signed the reservation and purchase order and apparently made the sale to Mr. H.O. Lee. He stated that original of this form was given to the purchaser in order that he could then obtain his ticket at Transporte del Norte, explaining that an original with two copies of the reservation and purchase order are made, and the original is given to the purchaser. One copy is kept at her office, and the third copy is forwarded to the main office of the travel agency, which is Transporte Chihuahua. I'm sorry, I just can't fucking say that word. SA to CV, Avienda 16, September, number 274, Ciudad Juarez. She made available the carbon copy of the above-mentioned purchase order and stated she would search her files for any other pertinent records. Subsequently, she advised on the same day by telephone that she had located Greyhound International Exchange Order number 43599 for presentation to the Greyhound agent at Laredo, Texas, and issued to Mr. H.O. Lee. This order was issued against the Western Greyhound Lines, 371 Market Street, San Francisco, for travel from Laredo to Dallas, Texas, via San Antonio, Texas. T12 advised on April 1st, 64, Ms. Schaefer made available a copy of the Greyhound International Exchange traveling order mentioned above, which noted that Mr. H.O. Lee was traveling to the port of exit via Transporte del Norte. The order reflected it was issued on October 1st, 63 for $12.80 U.S. by the Agencia Viajes. God damn it, why do they have to put these full fucking addresses in every time they mention the fucking company? According to the Miss Schaefer, the signature of the issuing agent on this order form was that of Rolando Barrios. Miss Schaefer's bookkeeper, Miss Norman Roman, made available the agency's cash receipt and disbursement ledger, which Miss Schaefer described as a record of cash receipts and disbursements of the business on a daily basis. These were records disclosed that on October 1st, 63, an entry was made in the ledger reflecting receipt of 25375 pesos, 2030 from Mr. H.O. Lee, which was paid to cover the cost of a bus trip from Mexico City to Dallas via Laredo. Ms. Schaefer explained that the entry reflecting receipt of cash is made in the cash receipt and disbursement ledger on the following and actual transaction. She added that of the total 253.75 peso amount, 93 was applied to a portion of the trip from Mexico to Laredo, and the rest was applied from Laredo to Dallas. The above record reflected that the total amount of 253.75 pesos was paid on Agencia de Viejas reservation and purchase order number 14618 that H.O. Lee was also issued Greyhound International Exchange Order 43599 to cover the trip from Laredo to Dallas. The above-mentioned cash ledger reflected that letter B appeared to be beside the name of H.O. Lee, and Miss Schaefer explained that the letter B represents the surname initial of Rolando Barrios, the former employee of the firm who handled the transaction with H.O. Lee. The cash ledger also revealed that under the figure of 253.75 pesos, the amount of the cash transaction were illegible handwritten initials, and Ms. Schaefer stated that those were the initials of Elsa Maynez, another former employee of the firm, acknowledging receipt of the 253 pesos of Maynez from Barrios for entry into the cash ledger. Ms. Schaefer advised that Rolando Barrios was involved in a financial problem with her agency for which she discontinued his services. She furnished his home address in blah, 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 and stated that he was last known to be employed at the Mauna Loa restaurant in Mexico City. On April 1st, 1964, Ms. Schaefer made available a copy of a form captioned Western Greyhound Lines, Market Street, San Francisco. This sales report covers the period from October 1st to October 31st, and Ms. Schaefer advised that the record on this information is recapitulation of travel sales during the month of October 63 made by the agency as agents for the Western Greyhound Lines, in connection with which Greyhound International exchange orders were issued to the travelers. There were 12 such sales records on the above-mentioned sales report, which reflects that the second entry or sale made involved the issuance of Greyhound International exchange order 43599 to one passenger, Mr. H.O. Lee, for travel from Laredo, Texas to Dallas, Texas. Total fare for that portion of the trip being recorded as $12.80 U.S. Ms. Schaefer advised that the foregoing must be maintained as a matter of permanent record in her office because of Mexican government regulations. On April 2nd, 64, T11 was advised by Ms. Schaefer that Margarita Labastida, who also worked in the front office while Barrios was present, had informed her that she remembered an American who purchased a travel order but could not recall the date, nor could she state it was Oswald. Upon interview, Ms. Labastida could only recall that the American was tall, wore disheveled clothing, and had a great deal of hair. She could not be more specific about the date of the description of the American. Photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald were exhibited to Teresa and blah, 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 and the agency, and they were unable to identify Oswald. Interview of Rolando Barrios. On April 2nd, 64, the following information was furnished to T13. Rolando Barrios advised he was employed at the Chihuahuanese travel agency and now was employed as a cashier at the Mauna Loa restaurant in Mexico City. Barrios reviewed the copy of the reservation and purchase order number 14618 of the travel agency, reflecting the sale on September 30th, 63, of seat number 12 on the 8:30 a.m. trip of Transporte del Norte from Mexico City to Laredo, Texas on October 2nd, and definitely identified the handprinting and signature thereon as his own. He also viewed a copy of International Exchange Order 43599 dated October 1, 63, recording the sale to Mr. H.O. Lee of transportation by Greyhound bus from Laredo, Texas to Dallas, Texas. He stated that the handprinting and signature on this document were his, and that undoubtedly had handled the transaction represented by the two documents. Barrios reviewed photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald and advised that he was unable to affirm positively that he recalled Oswald in connection with the travel agency. He related at the time that Oswald's photographs were being published widely in newspapers and magazines, and was so impressed by the feeling that he had known or met Oswald at some time, but had been unable to associate the feeling with any particular incident. Okay, interview of personnel at Transporte del Norte Terminal, Mexico City. On April 3rd, 64, the Mexico City terminal manager for Transporte del Norte, Ricardo Medina Beltran, reiterated that he had no recollection whatsoever with respect to Oswald, and explained that he has no contact with passengers except under unusual circumstances, since his office is removed from the passenger area of the terminal. On the same date, bus drivers Rogelio Cuevas and Ramon Gonzalez were contacted upon their arrival at the Mexico City terminal and advised that they reside in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, at Magna Vista number 232 and at San Juan Mendez number 1407, Altos, respectively. Although they had no independent recollection in connection therewith, they were aware of the fact that the company's records reflect that they were drivers of bus number 332 between Mexico City and Monterrey. On October 2nd, 63, they stated that they usually leave the bus at Monterrey, and it was their understanding that on October 2nd, all passengers from bus 332 were transferred to another unit, which transported them to Nuevo Laredo with a relief driver. They viewed all available photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald and stated they were unable to recall his having been a passenger. They pointed out that they rarely noticed the passengers and would not remember one of them unless an incident or special circumstance created a special reason for noticing and recalling them. On April 2nd, 64, Angel Curiel informed that he is a ticket salesman at the Mexico City terminal of Transporte del Norte and that he recognized his handwriting on the October 2nd, 63 passenger list for bus number 332 in connection with the items listed under destination and ticket number. He explained that he undoubtedly exchanged ticket at ticket number 13688 for the travel agency purchase order and recorded the number of the ticket before delivering it to the passenger. Curiel viewed available photographs of Oswald and stated he could not recall him in connection with his duties on the bus line. On the same date, salesman Miguel Saucedo advised that the handwriting on the passenger list under the name of passenger and the word Chihuahuanese opposite seat number 12 indicated that he received the telephonic reservation on the space by the travel agency. Saucedo did not recall the matter and was unable to identify photographs of Oswald in connection with it. Ticket salesman Canudo S. Rojas and Juan Gascon advised that they recognized their handwriting on the October 2nd, 63 manifest in connection with some of the reservations and ticket sales. But upon reviewing photographs of Oswald, could not recall having seen him at the Mexico City terminal of Transporte del Norte. Medina and the 4 ticket salesmen mentioned above explained that the diversity of serial numbers for tickets sold on the passenger list in question is occasioned by the fact that they each sell from different blocks of tickets for the various destinations involved. G. Interviews of personnel at Transporte del Norte bus terminal restaurant, Monterrey, Nuevo Leon. On April 6, 64, T7 interviewed the following personnel of the restaurant located in the Transporte del Norte terminal at Monterrey, Nuevo Leon: David Sanchez Gonzalez, Maria Otila Tovar, Rafael Zavala Castillo, and Manuel Cuelas Garcia. All 4 of these persons advised they worked a 2-to-2 shift and that all were on duty during that shift October 2nd to 3rd, 63. No one else worked during this shift. Upon being shown various photographs of Oswald, none was able to recall having seen him in the restaurant at any time. According to T7, the restaurant is located within the Transporte del Norte terminal in Monterrey, there being a ticket counter at one end of the terminal, a waiting room in the center, and the restaurant at the opposite end of the waiting room for the ticket counter. H. Inquiry at Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, main offices of Transporte del Norte. T18, a confidential source abroad, provided the following information. On April 2nd, 64, Ramon Trevino Cazada, Vice President and General Manager of Transporte del Norte in Monterrey and Nuevo Leon, caused a search to be made for and succeeded in locating an envelope containing the tickets surrendered by the passengers to the bus drivers for the Mexico City Monterrey travel in bus number 332 on October 2nd, 63. Among those tickets was number 13688, which reflected thereon that it had been used for seat number 12 on that trip. Trevino advised that the company records reflected the following arrival of bus number 332 at Monterrey: 9:15 October 2nd, 1963. All passengers destined for Nuevo Laredo and beyond were transferred to bus number 373, which was driven by Alvarado Ibarra, and departed from Monterrey at 9:50 p.m. He explained further that because of the company has 13 trips daily between Monterrey and Nuevo Laredo, no effort is made to maintain a record of the passengers who board the bus at Monterrey in connection therewith. Mr. Trevino explained that Ibarra recently married and resides at Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas. On April 3rd, 64, Mr. Trevino stated that he had located the portion of the ticket 13680 for travel from Monterrey to Laredo, and that its presence in the envelope for that trip of October 2nd to 3rd was a definite indication that the travel was performed. Bus passenger Anastasio Ruiz Meja identified photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald. T13 advised as follows. On March 30th, 1964, Ricardo Medina Beltram, manager of the Mexico City terminal of the Transporte del Norte bus line, advised that seat number 15 of Transporte del Norte bus number 332 for the trip October 2nd, 63 had been reserved for another bus line or travel agency, and that the company would have no record with respect to the identity of the occupant of the seat. On March 31st, 64, Ms. Roja Maria Orozco, auditor of the Auto Viejas Internationales S.A., International Auto Travels, Inc., located a record of the sale by that firm of a ticket for travel in seat number 15 of the 8:30 a.m. October 2nd, 63 bus. I thought it was seat 12 we're looking for. Am I wrong? Thought it was seat 12. For travel seat number 15 at 8:30 October, the bus of transported blah, blah, blah. This transport was sold to Ruiz Meza for travel via Transporte del Norte line to Laredo, from Laredo to Chicago, Illinois by Greyhound bus line. T19, a confidential source abroad, advised as follows. On April 5th, 64, Anastasio Ruiz Meza, who resides at Solana, number 710, Mexico, and who was employed in the auditor's office, customs section, Mexican Ministry of the Treasury and Public Credit, advised as follows. He was a passenger on the Transporte del Norte bus, which departed Mexico City at 8:30 a.m., October 2nd, 1963, en route to Laredo, Texas, and occupied seat number 15 on that bus. Following his arrival in Laredo, he departed on a Greyhound Line bus, with his final destination being Chicago, Illinois. Ruiz Mejas still had the Transporte del Norte ticket stub for the Mexico City, Laredo, Texas portion of the trip. As nearly as he could recall, the bus departed without delay at 8:30 a.m. October 2nd. He believed there were about 14 or 15 other passengers who boarded the bus with him. He could not remember whether or not any Americans had boarded the bus in Mexico City, but stated that seated next to him on the bus was an individual whom he described as being tall, heavy, about 54 years of age. This individual, whose name he did not know, was of Mexican extraction and traveling to Houston, Texas. The person sat next to Ruiz Meza on several buses from Mexico City to San Antonio, Texas, where he departed the bus. Changes of buses had occurred at Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and at Laredo, Texas on the trip north. The Transporte del Norte manifest for the trip of October 2nd, 1963, bus number 332, lists space for one Eulalio Rodriguez in seat number 14, which adjoins seat number 15, with the final destination for Rodriguez listed as Houston. Directly across the aisle to this rear seat, the seating arrangements of the bus being staggered on either side, was a young Ecuadorian couple, assumed to be a man and wife, seats number 8 and 9. He was not certain that this couple was from Ecuador, but believed they were South Americans. Ruiz identified a photograph of Juan Mateo de Cuba, as it appears on Mexican government tourist form PM5, number 3625296, as identical with the above described Ecuadorian. Ruiz also viewed a photograph of Ada Francisca Bislip de Cuba, as it appears on Mexican government tourist form FW5, blah, 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 which depicts Miss de Cuba wearing eyeglasses. Ruiz could not be sure this woman is identical with the woman traveling in the company of the person whom he identified as being Juan Mateo de Cuba. He stated that the woman who was seated next to de Cuba was not wearing eyeglasses. The above described tourist forms describe Mr. and Mrs. de Cuba as being residents of Aruba, Dutch West Indies. The Transporte del Norte manifest for the above described trip lists space for J.M. de Cuba and one other person in seats number 8 and 9. After departure from Mexico City at 8:30 a.m. on October 2nd, 1963, the bus did not stop until its arrival in San Luis Potosi, Mexico, at about 1 o'clock the same day. After about a half-hour stop, everyone again boarded the bus for the trip to Monterrey, arriving at the Transporte del Norte terminal about 9:30 p.m. Ruiz recalled that upon arrival at the bus terminal in Monterrey, everyone debarked and many of the passengers went to the restaurant located at the Transporte del Norte bus terminal to eat. While Ruiz was eating, one of the tables in the restaurant at the Transporte del Norte bus terminal in Monterrey, a young American was seated alone at a table a few yards away from him to his rear. He advised that this was the first time he had noted the presence of this person, whom he described about 27 years of age, approximately 130, 135 pounds, brown hair, about 5'7", 5'8", in a height, and of slender build. He recalled the same individual boarding the bus in Monterrey a few minutes after him. Ruiz viewed several photographs of Lee Harvey Oswald and positively identified 2 profile image photographs of Oswald as being the above described American youth who was seated to his rear in the restaurant of the Transporte del Norte bus terminal in Monterrey. He advised that he had no doubt in his mind with respect to this identification. One of the photographs identified Ruiz's photograph of Oswald, which had appeared in Life magazine depicting Oswald passing out pro-Cuban literature on a street in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is a profile photograph of Oswald showing his right arm extended his torso. The other photograph identified by Ruiz was a profile view of Oswald taken in New Orleans Police Department on August 9th, 1963, under New Orleans Police Department number 112723. He had seen front view photographs of Oswald in the newspapers following the assassination of President Kennedy. However, he pointed out that he did not associate the photographs with the above described American, nor did he give any careful studied thought to their being identical to the American youth. The American youth, whom he described as being Oswald, was dressed in a light-colored, perhaps white, open-collared, short-sleeved sports shirt and was bareheaded, according to Ruiz. This individual was not wearing a coat. He did not recall the color or type of trousers this person was wearing. His shoes or the luggage he might have been carrying. After the meal stop in Monterrey, which lasted approximately 1/2 hour, the passengers boarded a different bus of the Transporte del Norte line, and he observed there also had been a change of bus drivers at the time. He recalled the individual whom he identified as Oswald boarded the bus in Monterey After he did, and after he had taken his seat, number 15, he noticed the American youth go down that aisle past him. He believed this person had taken a seat in the right rear section of the bus on the same side of the bus where Ruiz was seated. He believed the bus arrived at kilometer 26, the immigration and custom control point located about 16 miles south of Nuevo Laredo. At about 1 o'clock a.m. on October 3rd, 63, upon reaching kilometer 26, the bus stopped and an official, whom Ruiz assumed to be a Mexican immigration officer, boarded the bus and proceeded to review the travel documents of the passengers on board. He recalled seeing the immigration official in the aisle on his way to the rear, to the front of the bus, and hearing him exclaim in English, "Come on with me," apparently directing his remarks to someone in the rear of the bus. He then saw the Mexican immigration official go to the front of the bus, followed by the American identified by him as being Oswald. He assumed some question had arisen as to the American's travel documents. The interior lights of the bus were on at the time, and he saw the immigration official at the American get off the bus and enter a small immigration office located at the side of a road a few feet from the bus. Ruiz estimated that from the time the American left the bus with the immigration officer until the time he boarded again and went to the rear of the vehicle was perhaps 3 or 4 minutes. He recalled that after the American again boarded the bus, Mr. DeCuba left the bus and went to the immigration office, and he assumed that there was some question with respect to DeCuba's travel documents. He believed about a minute later that DeCuba returned, seated himself in the bus. The only 2 passengers he recalled having left the bus at kilometer 26 were the American and Mr. DeCuba. He estimated that the entire operation of the immigration check at kilometer 26 lasted from 10 to 15 minutes, and shortly after Mr. DeCuba boarded the bus, the driver continued the journey to Nuevo Laredo, where the bus arrived at the Transporte del Norte bus terminal about 1:30 a.m., October 3rd, 1963. All the passengers left the bus in Nuevo Laredo, remaining at the bus terminal for a period of 20 minutes to 1/2 hour. During the period of passengers were in the Transporte del Norte terminal in Nuevo Laredo, he recalled seeing Oswald waiting near the bus alone. He did not recall observing the American speaking to anyone. He recalled that after a short stop in Nuevo Laredo, the passengers boarded the same bus on which they had traveled from Monterrey to Nuevo Laredo. He recalled the American, whom he identified as Oswald, boarding the bus at Nuevo Laredo for the trip across the International Bridge to Laredo, Texas, as he remembered seeing the American go down the aisle to the rear of the bus after he, Ruiz, was in his seat. From that point on, he does not recall seeing the American again. The Transporte del Norte bus proceeded across the International Bridge and in several minutes was in Laredo, Texas, on the United States of the bridge. The bus stopped on the south side of the United States government building adjacent to the steps which lead into the offices where, according to Ruiz, he was vaccinated. All passengers left the bus and were proceeded up the stairway leading to what he assumed were immigration offices. He stated that he and another person, whom he described as a short Mexican male of advanced age and whom he believed had boarded the bus at Monterrey, were the only persons who remained behind to be vaccinated. Ruiz estimated that the entire United States government processing operation at the port of entry was about 1.5 hours in duration. Everyone already had boarded the bus by the time he had been processed by United States immigration, and he was the last of the passengers to board the bus for the short trip to the Laredo bus terminal. Upon reaching the Laredo bus terminal, everyone again left the bus. After 1/2 hour, he boarded a 2-tiered Greyhound line bus in the Laredo bus terminal and automatically seated himself in seat number 15. Since he had been in that seat all the way from Mexico City, he estimated that there might have been a total from 15 to 20 passengers who boarded the Greyhound bus at Laredo. Ruiz estimated the departure from Laredo, the Greyhound bus, as being about 3 a.m., October 3rd, 63, and the arrival of in San Antonio about 8 a.m. that morning. He observed that everyone got off the bus at San Antonio. He believed the stop in San Antonio lasted about 1/2 hour, after which the passengers boarded the same bus and proceeded to Dallas, Texas, arriving at about 1 o'clock on the same day. Ruiz recalled the stop in Dallas lasted about 2 hours, approximately 3 o'clock p.m., when the same bus departed Dallas for the journey to Chicago, Illinois via Tulsa, Oklahoma. Ruiz recalled seeing for the last time the American, whom he identified as Oswald, when the latter boarded the bus at Nuevo Laredo prior to the trip across the International Bridge to Laredo, Texas. So let's get this clear, because this is fucking important. Because we have Kerry Thornley and Marina Oswald being seen in Alice, Texas on the 3rd. But here we have a person who Ruiz is now saying that he sees the American. And this is important. Let me read this quote here. Ruiz recalled seeing for the last time the American whom he identified as Oswald when the latter boarded the bus at Nuevo Laredo prior to the trip across the bridge to Laredo, Texas. So the last time that this witness sees the person he believes is Oswald is when they are getting on the bus to cross the border into Texas. And that's it. He doesn't see him anywhere beyond that. That tells me that this fucking person got off the bus. Let's see if there's any indication of that. If there are no witnesses who see them from Laredo to Dallas. Ruiz did not recall having seen the American speak to anyone at any time. It appears to Ruiz that the American was traveling alone. He commented the American had given him the impression of being quite an individual of a quiet individual of a retiring nature. Ruiz viewed a photograph of Philippe Peter E. Vanderform, as it appears in the Mexican government tourist, FM number 8, number whatever, which Vandervorm utilized upon entry to Mexico in September 63. Ruiz did not recall having seen this person as a passenger on either of the Transporte del Norte bus trip on the trip to Mexico City. All right, so there's another person here, a Philip Peter, P-I-T-E-R, E. Vandervorm, V-O-R-M. That appears that they were looking into. It was another passenger who entered Mexico in September. J. Interview of Transporte del Norte passenger Jose Barriga Bernal. On April 6, 64, Captain Jose Barriga Bernal advised T-13 that he is a retired officer of the Mexican Army and resides in Mexico City at Gabino Berreda 104, apartment number 3. He recalled that on October 2nd, 1963, he and his wife had traveled from Mexico City to Laredo on Transporte del Norte, and after entering the United States had continued to Dallas, Texas via Greyhound bus. He viewed available photographs of Oswald and stated emphatically that he could not recall him as a passenger. He mentioned that the only passenger he could recall was Agapito Del Rio, with whom he conversed while they were passing through the United States Customs at Laredo, Texas. List obtained of departure of non-Mexican citizens on October 3rd, 63 at Nuevo Laredo. T1, who is familiar with the workings of the Mexican Ministry of Gobernación Interior, made available for examination forms FM5 and FM8 for all non-Mexican citizens departing Mexico at Nuevo Laredo, Tamaulipas, and as tourists on October 3rd, 63. So here, let me just name something else I caught. So allegedly we have a fucking travel visa issued September 17th from the Mexican consulate in New Orleans, right? And it's issued to the name of Lee Harvey Oswald. Therefore, how the fuck could this person give a fake name, but yet have a travel visa for Lee Harvey Oswald? You see what I'm saying? Doesn't make any sense. This has to correspond with the sign-in at the fucking hotel where they put Lee, comma, Harvey Oswald, right? H-O Lee. Investigation in this case disclosed that Oswald departed from Mexico at Nuevo Laredo October 3rd. Oswald's departure was handled by Mexican Immigration Service employee Alberto Arzamendi Chapa. According to T1, Arzamendi Chapa worked the 12 o'clock midnight to 8 a.m. shift on October 3rd, 63. From the tourist cards, forms FM5 and FM8, and the copies of the forms FM11, the following is a list of the individuals who departed Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on October 3rd, 1963, the list having been divided into those individuals traveling on forms FM5 and those traveling on forms FM8, since the forms FM11 are so set up. The number appearing before each name is the number which appears on the form FM11. Holders of forms FM5, Teodora Herrera Alvarez. We got a whole list of people here. Let me see if there's any names that jump off the page at me. No. Eugene Everald Hunter. Don't know that name. Victor Joseph Kim with 2 M's. Patricia Ann Kim. Cornelius D. Lefebvre. No names jumping off the page. Here's an interesting one. John H. Bennett, with a very long description here, utilized Departed utilized using Form FM-17, number 518151, issued by Mexican Immigration Office, Nuevo Laredo, October 3rd. The Form FM-17 is not used ordinarily by tourists, but rather by Mexicans and foreigners having permanent residence in Mexico. Attached to the Form FM-17 was an official statement drawn up by the Mexican Immigration Office, which set forth that Bennett, a resident of 10250 Haitian Drive in Miami, had been stopped on October 3rd, 63, at a Mexican immigration check station located 26 kilometers south of Nuevo Laredo. At this time, Bennett claimed that he had lost his tourist documentation and stated he originally entered Mexico at Nuevo Laredo. A check of the Mexican immigration records at Nuevo Laredo disclosed that Bennett had entered Mexico at that port of entry on September 8th, 63, on FM-8. From this, it was obvious that Bennett had overstayed his 15-day permission granted by the FM-8, and accordingly, he was required to deposit 200 pesos to cover any fine that might grow out of his overstay in Mexico, and he was permitted to depart Mexico using Form FM-17. This form described him as 53 years of age, born in Nutley, New Jersey, married, accountant, and proceeding from Guadalajara to Houston by automobile. The same information appeared on the FM-11. Departure was handled by Jose Lara. All right, here is another one. We have number... Hang on. Number 99 says, as has been previously reported, this traveler was Oswald. He was in possession of Mexican tourist card FM-8, number 24085, issued September 17th, 1963 by the Mexican Consulate General, New Orleans, Louisiana, under the name Lee Harvey Oswald. The card was signed Lee Harvey Oswald. The card described him as 23 years of age, married, and a photographer by profession. It indicated that he presented a birth certificate as proof of citizenship. Entry was at Nuevo Laredo on September 26, 63, with an announced final destination of Mexico City. No means of travel was shown on the tourist card, either at the time of entry or at departure. The FM-11 listed his name as Harvey Oswald Lee, showed he was proceeding from Mexico City with a final destination of New Orleans, Louisiana, and he was traveling by auto. Records of the Mexican Immigration Service in Mexico City contained no information to substantiate that he was actually traveling by automobile, as has been previously reported. The departure of Oswald was handled by an employee of the Mexican Immigration Service named Alberto Chapa. Additional list of persons who departed on October 3rd, 1963, and who entered on September 26, 1963 at Nuevo Laredo. T20, a confidential source abroad, advised as follows. In order to ascertain the identities of other persons who entered Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on September 26, 1963, and departed Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on October 3rd, 1963, utilizing travel documents other than FM-5 and FM-8 tourist cards, the following inquiry was conducted. On April 20th and 29th, 64, source examined the original Mexican Immigration Department FM-11 forms recording data concerning persons who entered Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on September 26, 63, and departed from Mexico at Nuevo Laredo October 3rd, 63, with various types of travel documents. The original FM-11 forms relating thereto were reviewed inasmuch as separate lists are maintained for each type of travel document issued to travelers. The following is the complete list of persons who record who entered Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on September 26, 63, and who departed Mexico through that city on October 3rd, utilizing travel documents other than FM-5 and FM-8. It was explained to source that these persons and those previously recorded as having entered and departed, which forms FM-5 and FM-8, do not include all persons who entered and departed at Nuevo Laredo on September 26, 63, and October 3rd, 63, respectively, as there are numerous individuals who cross the United States-Mexico border daily who are not documented by Mexican authorities, including many Mexican nationals traveling from the interior of Mexico to the United States. T21, a confidential source abroad, compiled the following from a review of the forms FM-11 described above. Departures October 3rd. Departures of October 3rd of non-Mexican citizens traveling on Form FM6 tourist cards. Or that shouldn't be an F, it should be a fucking 5 or an 8, shouldn't it? Frank Woodrow Blades, non-Mexican citizen. Jesus DeMarc. This is a child listed on the form. We have a whole bunch of names here. I'm not going to read all these fucking names. This is a whole big travel roster of people who are moving around at this time, and it's like 4 pages of it. I'm not going through any of it. All right, next page. M. Oswald's travel documents and Mexican government records. The following information was furnished by T13 on March 17, 1964. The travel document with which Lee Harvey Oswald entered Mexico on September 26, 1963 is described as a Mexican Ministry of Gobernación Interior FM8 and is commonly referred to as a tourist card, which consists of 2 sections, an original and a carbon copy duplicate. At the time of Oswald's travel to Mexico, the FM8 was valid for a single entry to the interior of Mexico and residence for no longer than 15 days. The original tourist card carried by Oswald records the following data. FM8 number 24085, valid for 15 days. Full name. Okay, here's where it's interesting. Lee, Harvey Oswald. So it's H.O. Lee was the name that was given, right? Harvey Oswald Lee, profession photographer, sex male, married, showed a birth certificate, final destination Mexico City, New Orleans, Louisiana, September 17th, and then the signature of the bearer is Lee H. Oswald. So here we have contradiction within a single document, right? Signature of Lee Harvey Oswald, but the name of Lee, Harvey Oswald. See, this is CIA tradecraft obfuscation. It bears the stamp of the Consulate General of Mexico at New Orleans, Louisiana, indicating issuance that agency and date stamp of Mexican immigration official Helio Tuexi Maydon, reflecting entry into Mexico at Nuevo Laredo, September 26, 1963. The stamp for departure is that of immigration official Alberto Arzamendi Chapa, and the date is shown to as October 2nd, 1963. Under normal procedures, the means of travel of the bearer upon entry into Mexico is recorded with a stamped, typed, or handwritten notation. However, this record does not appear on the FM8 for Oswald. Ooh, and why doesn't it? Why doesn't it? Because it was made up after the fact. Had to have been. A review of the original tourist cards, FM5, FM8, and one FM17, the latter explained above, in the possession of the Immigration Department of the Mexican Ministry of Gobernación, revealed that 79 persons documented with those forms had departed from Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on October 3rd, 63, among them Lee Harvey Oswald. On March 23rd, 1964, Mr. Maclovio Herrera, chief of the travel control files of the Mexican Immigration Department, described the immigration form FM11 as statistical record to be prepared every 2 weeks on nationals and aliens entering and leaving the country. Mr. Herrera explained that separate FM11 forms are submitted semi-monthly by all Mexican immigration stations for entries and departures from Mexico. He explained that separate lists are prepared in connection with the various types of travel documents presented and are submitted in duplicate, an original and one carbon copy, to the travel control files for checking in comparison with the tourist cards or other travel documents on which they are based. Under current procedures, 20 names are placed on each page of the FM11 in alphabetical order by date, and prior to final filing, these are reviewed by a clerk who may make corrections and report possible discrepancies, which might require investigation in order to make certain that the immigration laws of Mexico are not being violated. The items of information which are recorded on the FM11 in horizontal columns are chronological number, chronological listing number during a 15-day period, identification document number, complete name, sex, age, marital status, nationality, occupation, place and country of origin, final destination, date of entry of departure, type of vehicle in which traveling, date of entry, date of departure, latter columns to determine period of residence and remarks. A review of the original tourist cards for persons traveling as tourists who departed from Mexico at Nuevo Laredo on October 3rd, 1963, disclosed that in no instance did any notation appear on the travel documents to indicate the manner of travel of the bearer or the destination in the United States upon departure from Mexico. It was observed that on the FM-11 forms, the destination of the traveler at the time of departure was completed invariably with the same information as appeared on the tourist card as to place of residence, place of issuance, or notation that the information was not available. FM-11 preparation and utilization by Mexican immigration. Inspector Jose Mario Del Val of the Inspection Department of the Mexican Ministry of Gobernacion, who conducted investigation at Nuevo Laredo concerning the travel in Mexico of Lee Harvey Oswald, advised on March 12, 1964, that the typist who prepares the FM-11 has no information available to her other than which appears on the tourist cards. She stated the typist prepares the FM-11 for persons entering the country from the duplicate copies of the tourist cards, which are surrendered to the immigration official at the time of entry of the traveler. The duplicate tourist cards are then transmitted to the headquarters of the Immigration Department in Mexico, DF, that's Mexico City, with the FM-11 form for the 15-day period. In the same manner, the FM-11 form for departures is prepared on the basis of data taken from the original of the tourist card, which is surrendered by the traveler to the immigration official upon departure from the country. Del Val acknowledged that the Mexican Immigration Department does not have any major interest in the method of travel or destination of the departing traveler other than to make certain that the individual who enters the country with an automobile is removing the vehicle upon departure. He added that the typist who prepares the departure FM-11 usually records the means of travel as being the same as that appearing on the tourist card in connection with the traveler's entry to the country. However, in some instances, she may guess at the means of travel on the basis of the usual assignment at the airport, railroad station, or highway checking station of the immigration official whose cancellation stamp appears on the tourist card. On March 13, 1964, Maclovio Herrera, chief of the travel control files of the Mexican Department of Immigration Ministry of Gobernacion, and his assistant, Eduardo Rivas, made the following comments concerning Mexican immigration records and procedures. The means of travel and destination data appearing on the departure FM-11 forms are not information in which the Mexican Immigration Department has any substantive interest and are filled out by the typist only because the same form is used to record both arrival and departure information. This information with respect to the arrivals is most essential to assist the Immigration Department in maintaining a record and control of aliens who are in Mexico as temporary residents without authorization to be gainfully employed. There is no source of information from which the typist preparing the FM-11 can obtain data for it other than the tourist cards, data provided to her by the immigration official who may bundle a group of cards together and label them as having been taken up on a departing train or other vehicle, or her own knowledge of the immigration station where the canceling official may have been working during a particular period of time. Inquiry was made of Herrera with respect to certain horizontal lines which appear on the FM-11, and he explained that such lines are drawn to delineate between different dates on the same page and also to designate an individual concerning whom some research is being done or a report has been submitted to some section or department of the Ministry of Gobernacion. With respect to the fact that on the copies of the FM-11, which were made available for study and review, there appeared under the remarks, number 16, column, considerable data concerning the date and place of issuance of the tourist cards, Herrera advised that this information did not appear on the originals of the FM-11 which were in his possession, and he was certain that this information had been added only on the carbon copy. On March 23, 1964, T1 produced the carbon copies of the FM-11 forms relating to Oswald's travel in Mexico, and it was observed that column 16 thereof had been completed in original typing with the data from the tourist cards as to date and agency where each tourist card had been issued. T1 said that the entries in column 16 were made to be of possible assistance in the investigation with respect to Oswald. T1 added that the information in column 16 was taken from the tourist cards of the travelers who were recorded in the FM-11 forms. With regard to observations that the date of issuance of Oswald's tourist card was recorded in the column 16 as having taken place on September 16th, 63, T1 stated very definitely that this had been a typographical error on the part of the stenographer, who should have copied the information from Oswald's tourist card to the effect that it had been issued on September 1763. So here we have a clear mistake. But is it a mistake? Are there really any mistakes like on this level? I don't know. So basically on the tourist card, it's dated September 16th, but Oswald's tourist card is his visa. The tourist card application we know he went on the 17th, but it says here that the date was recorded as having been on the 16th, and it was just an error. I don't know, my red flags are waving, like my spidey sense is tingling. So let me see. Other inquiries concerning Oswald's travel. Transporte Frontera bus line. The original passenger list or manifest relating to departure of number 2 bus number 340 on October 2nd, 1963 of the Transporte Frontera SA de CV bus line, which has its headquarters in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and in Mexico City terminal at Calle Buena Vista number 7. The information recorded on the passenger list is handwritten. The names are not complete, and portions of it are not legible. However, the following constitutes an effort to reproduce it as clearly as possible, the information which appears on the list. So, let me see if I can go through this list. Saucedo, Oswald, Sarah Landeros, Adrian Hernandez, somebody named Juana, Angel Gallegos, SRA, I'm assuming that's a Senora, Morales, Nicholas Gonzalez, Rafael Flores, Gautier, Ganstein, Angel Perez, Antonio Cazares, Senora Aguiar. None of these names are jumping off the page at me, and even if they did, we couldn't connect them to anything at this point. At the top of the manifest, the name Transportes Frontera is handwritten, and in Spanish, the following heading is printed. Reservations for 13 o'clock, destination Laredo, departure number 2 on bus 340, date 2, month October of 1963. The underlined portions are blanks, which had been completed in ink. Following the list of passengers is the notation 9 Laredo, 7 Monterrey. Hand printed at the bottom of the page appears driver Dionisio Reina and FCO Saucedo, as well as the numbers 13-2. On the left-hand margin of the manifest are the handwritten figures 78 and 16. At the top right-hand corner thereof are the numerals 186, 41, and under these 227. On the back side of the document are the numbers 143.30 and 108.80, and thereunder as a column addition 255.10. The following information was made available by T13 on March 9th. Anytime you hear about a T1 or a T10 or a T13, those are informant numbers from the FBI. The following information came from T13 on March 9th, 64. On March 5th, 64, Gilberto Lozano Guizar advised that he's the manager of the Mexico City terminal of the Transporte Frontera bus company, Calle Buena Vista number 7, which has a franchise or through service between Mexico City and Monterrey and Nuevo Laredo, but is not permitted to sell tickets or pick up passengers at intermediate localities. Lozano stated a complete study of Transporte Frontera bus company records and procedures has been made, which resulted in the conclusion that the person designated as Oswald on October 2nd, 1963 passenger manifest did not purchase a ticket and could not have traveled on the trip which it relates. He pointed out that the passenger reservations, tickets sold, and passengers actually boarded the bus in Mexico DF are recorded on the form which is provided for that purpose and maintained on a clipboard on the counter from which ticket sales normally are made by the ticket salesman and dispatcher Francisco Alvarado. He admitted that Alvarado occasionally is assisted during rush hours or a temporary absence from the counter by the baggage handler Lucio Lopez Medina, who may receive and record reservations on the manifest but does not handle the actual receipt of payments for the ticket. Woohoo! I like that. I like that a lot. So, despite the fact that there's a listing here for an OSWD, here's the deal. This is the passenger list. I'm going to try to explain this to you because I skipped over I told you some of the names, but I skipped over like some of the relevant stuff that I didn't really realize was relevant until just now. So we have the passenger list. This is the list of the bus passengers, the Transportes Frontera bus line, which travels, has its headquarters in Monterrey, Nuevo Leon, Mexico, and its Mexico City terminal at Calle Buena Vista number 7 was obtained. The information recorded on the passenger list is handwritten. So basically, this is one of the bus lines that made its way over the border to Nuevo Laredo, right? And so it says number 1 and has a ticket number 39633, FCO Saucedo, Monterrey. Okay, and one of these, FCO Saucedo, is the bus driver, one of the bus drivers, right? Because there were 2 bus drivers, and Saucedo was the name of one of the bus drivers. And then you have number 2, which is blank. There's nobody there. And then listed number 3 is the next person, 39634, FCO Saucedo. And so it's the same FCO Saucedo, so it's probably a spouse who went along on the ride with them. It's realistically probably what it is. And then the next one, seat number 4, there's no ticket number listed, and it says OSWLD. And remember, this is supposed to be, they recreated this from the notes, right? They had the original documents, but they were old and they were kind of messed up and they were wrinkled and torn and stuff because they didn't really give a shit. Nobody thought this was going to be important. And that's what we get. We get Oswald's name heading to Laredo, but we don't get much else. And they're saying right now he's not on that bus. Interesting, huh? Let me move on. Francisco Alvarado, ticket salesman and dispatcher for Transportes Frontera, advised that he prepared most of the handwriting on the October 2nd, 1963 manifest on which the name OSWLD and destined for LARED appeared opposite seat number 4. He stated he did not write the OSWD reservation information, and it was his opinion that the reservation had been made and the information recorded by the baggage handler, Lucio Lopez, with respect to the manifest for October 2nd, 1963. Alvarado furnished the following explanation. He was quite certain that the individual designated on the list as OSWLD did not purchase a ticket and did not travel on the trip relating to that manifest. No ticket number was recorded for that person, and a search of the company's records in Monterrey had failed to locate a ticket stub, which was not otherwise accounted for in connection with that particular trip. Alvarado and Gilberto Lozano stated the notations on the back of the manifest referred to advances of funds made by Alvarado to Lozano from the cash for repairs, parts, or other requirements. They related that the passenger lists are not kept as a permanent record, and when the manifest was located in the trash at the request of the investigators of the Mexican presidential staff, the blanks at the top of the form had not been filled in as to time, destination, trip number, bus number, and date, but they had completed those blanks from their personal knowledge in order to make that data clear to the investigators. They also had listed the names of the drivers on the form at that time. They affirmed that the handwritten Transportes Frontera at the top of the document had been added by some official of the Mexican government after the document was borrowed from them. Both Lozano and Alvarado stated that they had no recollection of Lee Harvey Oswald, could not recognize his photograph as being an individual who had been at the terminal or traveled on that bus line, and had no personal knowledge with respect to his contacts and activities in Mexico. They could offer no explanation as to how Mexican authorities had arrived at the conclusion that Oswald traveled on the Transportes Frontera bus of October 2nd, but pointed out that after the name was located on the manifest, they had not been given an opportunity of reviewing or checking that data. I'm fucking laughing. This is hilarious. And why am I laughing? I'm laughing because you can't fucking go down any road in Kennedy and just have a straight answer ever. Not fucking once. Everything is smoke and mirrors. Lucio Lopez Medina, baggage and freight handler at Transportes Frontera, related that he often assists with the ticket salesman by recording reservations, and he's quite certain he wrote OSWD and LARED opposite seat number 4 on the passenger manifest of October 2nd. He stated he also recorded the reservations and ticket sales to FCO Saucedo, one of the drivers, opposite seats number 1 and 3, Angel Gallegos, seat number 8, and possibly other items on the manifest. He had no personal recollection of Oswald, could not recognize his photograph as being anyone who had been at the bus terminal, and did not believe that Oswald had embarked on the bus in question. T12 furnished the following information. On March 31st, 64, Gilberto Lozano Guizar, manager of the Mexico City terminal of the Transportes Frontera bus company, Cal Buena Vista number 7, Mexico City, emphatically advised that the original passenger list or manifest relating to departure number 2 of bus number 340 on October 2nd, 1963, of the Transportes Frontera Bus Company is an authentic record of the data pertaining to that particular trip. So it's an original document. Lozano pointed out that a passenger list is compiled at the Mexico City terminal of the company for trips originating in Mexico City, and that following the departure of the bus, information relating to the number of passengers destined to particular points is radioed ahead to one of the main offices located along the point of travel. In case of the above described trip, the information was reported by radio to their Monterrey office. Lozano advised that once the information is relayed ahead and the trip is completed, for all practical purposes, they have no further need of conserving the passenger lists as a permanent record. He advised that officers of the presidential staff appeared at the bus terminal shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy, seeking to review passenger lists of the bus company for early October 63. And it was found that time of the completed block of forms for most of the month of October 63, which included the above described passenger list, was still in the baggage room at the terminal prior to being discarded. He stated that he had torn the October 2nd, 63 manifest from the block of forms and furnished it to one of the officers. Lozano advised that one Lieutenant Arturo Bosch, an investigator of the presidential staff, had reviewed the above described manifest. All right, let me pause real quick just so I can get this in my head. So this is pertaining to a leg of the trip, I believe a second leg of the trip, but it might have all been the same bus company, because you have the bus station in Mexico City, which is the Transportes Frontera Bus Company, located at Calle Benavista number 7 in Mexico City. And so then this person would have taken the bus to there was another bus stop they had to get off at, if you'll remember, and they had to switch buses, right? And then they had to, and then from there, they headed to Laredo, right? So it would appear that this person never got on the bus that they were supposed to transfer to, right? The name was called in ahead of time to the other station, added to the list. Hang on, let me verify where these interviews took place with these people. Lozano pointed out that a passenger list is compiled at the Mexico City terminal of the company for trips originating in Mexico City that follow the departure of the bus. Information relating to the number of passengers destined to particular points is radioed ahead to one of the main offices located along the points of travel. In case of the above described trip, the information was reported by radio to their Monterrey office. Lozano advised that once the information is relayed ahead and the trip is completed for all practical purposes. So the trip from Monterrey to the border is what I'm guessing that this person wasn't on. They were supposed to be on it, but they weren't on it. You see, that doesn't make much sense to me. It would make much more sense if they made it all the way to Laredo and then didn't get on the bus to Houston, and then instead got out with Marina, who met up with Carrie Thornley, who had the car. They have to meet up and have a car somewhere because they end up driving, right? So somehow Marina and her kid make it to the border where they meet with Carrie Thornley, and then he drives from there. So it would make more sense to me if the person missing off the bus happened at Laredo as opposed to in Monterey. But let me continue. Maybe I'm just jumping to conclusions. Lozano expressed the opinion that Arturo Bosch had filled in the blanks in ink at the top of the forms. So as to the time, destination, trip number, bus number, and date, and he had crossed out the date November 1st, replacing it with October 2nd, which appeared on the manifest. Lozano stated Bosch had done so on the basis of information he and Francisco Alvarado, the ticket salesman, had furnished to Bosch as an aid to his investigation on the matter. Lozano stated the hand-printed notation appeared at the bottom of the manifest. Driver Dionisio Reyna, FCO Sacedo. It was filled in by Bosch. Lozano advised that there definitely was only one section of bus number 340, which departed Mexico City at 1 p.m. on October 2nd en route to Monterrey, Mexico, and Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. He explained the notation departure 2 appeared on the top of the manifest, which he believed Bosch had filled out, merely indicating the second departure of Transportes Frontera bus on that particular day, October 2nd, 1963. The first departure of one of their buses on that day from the Mexico City terminal occurred at 9 a.m., with the terminal point being Monterrey, Mexico. He stated the second departure of Transportes Frontera bus from the Mexico City terminal on October 2nd, 63 was the departure at 1 o'clock, with the terminal point being Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, and the passengers on this bus were recorded on the above-mentioned manifest of October 2nd, 1963. He stated that there were 3 other departures on that day from Mexico City Terminal, the third departure having occurred at 2:30 p.m., with the terminal point being Matamoros, the fourth departure having occurred at 9 p.m. with the terminal point at Nuevo Laredo, and the fifth departure at 10 p.m. with the terminal point being Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico. Lozano advised the only bus operating on their line, which would have arrived at Nuevo Laredo between the hours of 12 and 8 a.m. on October 3rd, was bus number 340, which departed from the Mexico City terminal at 1 o'clock p.m. on October 2nd. Whoa. But see, here's the thing. We've already covered that we have witnesses who we've already mentioned in the previous episodes who remember Oswald, right? There was a guy who remembered the American who got pulled off the bus at the checkpoint, and then he's brought back on the bus. And then as they get to Nuevo Laredo, he doesn't see him anymore, right? So that would indicate that a person was on the bus, was pulled off the bus. He said he was an American. He looked like Oswald in the photographs, right? Right? So there's some kind of shenanigans going on here. T13 and T21 furnish the information which follows. On March 25th, 1964, Francisco Alvarado, ticket sales and dispatcher for the Transportes Frontera bus company at Mexico City, advised that the above-described manifest is an authentic document. He stated that he had prepared most of the handwriting on the manifest with regard to the notations appearing at the top of the manifest as to time, destination, trip number, bus number, and date. He expressed the opinion that those notations were filled in by one of the presidential staff investigators who reviewed the manifest at the bus terminal shortly after President Kennedy's assassination. He advised that the hand-printed notation appearing at the bottom of the page of the manifest, driver Dionisio Reyna, FCO Saucedo, also was made by one of the president's staff investigators, and he believed this person to be Lieutenant Arturo Bosch. On March 25th, 1964, Francisco Saucedo, bus driver for the Transporte Frontera bus company, advised in Mexico City that he had been one of the bus drivers who had driven the Transportes Frontera bus number 340 on October 2nd, 1963, which departed Mexico City at 1 p.m. on that date en route to Monterrey and Nuevo Laredo. He stated seats number 1 and number 3 on that bus had been reserved by him under tickets number 39633 and 39634. However, he did not recall for whom he made the reservations. He said that on occasion he reserves seats in advance for friends or relatives, but never does so for anyone with whom he's not acquainted. He could not recall who had utilized those seats on that particular day. He stated he was certain that seats number 1 and number 3 were not used by Oswald or Angel Perez. So remember, there was another... Oh, he had reserved the 2 names. Remember, that was on the manifest. His name was on there twice, so it wasn't necessarily like a spouse or something. He was reserved the seat, and then he ended up not using it, but he said it was definitely not Oswald or Angel Perez. On March 25th, 64, Dionisio Reyna, who was the co-driver with Saucedo on Transportes Frontera bus number 340 of October 2nd, 1963, advised at Mexico City that he could furnish no information regarding the individuals who had utilized seats number 1 and 3 on the trip in question. Reyna stated he was quite certain that Oswald did not travel on that particular bus. Interesting. Obviously, it's going to take me some time to digest all this. But we're going to wrap it up here for today. We're going to start off tomorrow with an inquiry at the Flecha Roja bus terminal. That's another bus terminal. This is some fascinating stuff. This is stuff I've never really gone over before. So hope everybody's enjoying this content, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. If you haven't signed up for my Substack, please do. It's the bomb. That's all there is to say about it. And I got signed books. If you need a signed book, they're $50. Shoot me a message on Telegram or an email, and Corey@coreyhughes.org, and we can get that taken care of. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Thanks.